Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. Today, I'm delighted we're going to be speaking to Anoushé Husain, who is a political advisor by day, but is currently ranked second in the UK as a paraclimber in just a year of training. She is also an ambassador for Limb Power, the leading charity for amputees and those with limb differences. Anoushé is the 2017 Asian Woman of Achievement Award winner for sport. Hi, Anoushé.
Hi.
How are things going with you?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Fantastic. So we actually managed to meet up and I watched your talk at the Women in Adventure Expo, which was fantastic, talking a lot about overcoming those self-limiting beliefs that I believe a lot of us have. And I know we'll come on and talk about that a little bit later on. But I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. How would you introduce yourself?
Oh gosh, I guess it's just really interesting because that's probably the hardest question I ever get on any interview nowadays. How would I introduce myself? Probably, I'm Anoushé. I'm energetic, passionate about what I believe in, and I live a really diverse life. I think that would probably be the headline quote from my life.
Oh, as I said, I want to talk about your diverse life. So tell us a little bit about growing up and your background.
So I was actually born in Luxembourg. My parents used to live in the UK and Dad got his job transferred. So that's where I grew up. I was schooled in a European school, so very much so a Europhile in how I was brought up. And then I went off to study in Brussels, then in China, in translation studies. I'm actually I'm bilingual English and French actually, and then fluent in Chinese, Spanish, and a variety of other languages. And then I came back to do my master's in policy and politics in Luxembourg. And so that's sort of my career side of life. And then, became a civil servant essentially. And then in sort of my other background, I've always been somebody who's been very sportive, sort of faced quite a lot of health issues as well. So I was born with one arm, had cancer 6 years ago and have a genetic disorder now, which means that my joints dislocate on me at really random points of the day. It's really fun. And kind of annoying. Yeah. So as I said, I lead and I'm a climber. So right now and a public figure. So it's almost like I have career me, public figure me, climber me, health me, and me.
There's definitely lots and lots happening in there. I mean, I have to say, I'm always so impressed when people can speak multiple languages. It's something I've always wanted to be able to do. So to be like bilingual in like English and French and speak Chinese. And what other languages do you speak?
So I speak English and French, Chinese, Spanish, Urdu. So because my parents are originally from Pakistan, so I picked up the language as well. What else? I speak Luxembourgish. I also do understand German, although I'm not fluent in speaking yet. And I do read Arabic, although I don't speak Arabic, which is just really weird because I don't know whether to count that as a language in my arsenal or not. And then I've got Italian as well.
Oh my goodness. So let's talk a little bit more about your sports then. I mean, even or being active as a child. So growing up with one arm, dealing with cancer, 6 years ago, your genetic disorder. So when you were younger, were you getting outside? Were you involved in climbing at that age?
Well, actually not climbing, but one of the things my parents did when I was born, so I didn't know anybody else with an upper limb difference growing up in Luxembourg. So it was very much so uncharted territory for my parents in terms of, how I was going to grow up, making sure I was going to be mainstream in school, things like that. Because honestly, Luxembourg, it's a small country. There just aren't that many people with limb differences. And if they are going to have limb differences, it tends to be, traumatic ones from accidents. And they tend to be lower limb. So they got in touch with a charity here in the UK called REACH, which its motto is its ability that counts, not disability. And with that, they sort of took that really on board and they got me active in all sorts of things. I mean, Mum tried ballet with me. I hated it, but I did get into swimming and then competitive swimming. I did get into martial arts and competitive martial arts as a consequence. I used to play cricket. So I was always a really active, despite sort of having a rather weakling immune system as a kid. I was always relatively active. and always kept very busy in extracurricular activities.
Did you ever feel different, or was there a point when you suddenly thought, oh, I'm not the same as other people?
It's really weird, because I actually asked my parents this question 3 weeks ago, because I'd seen on one of the forums I'm part of for upper limb kids that a couple of the kids were struggling with the whole concept of I'm different and why am I different. And I asked my parents, did I ever ask you that question? Did I ever ask you why am I different? And apparently I never did. So I don't think difference, I never verbalized it externally in the sense that, oh, I'm different and why am I? Yeah, of course I'm different. I mean, heck, I'm from an ethnic minority. To start with, the color of my skin is different. I have a visible difference, or a visible disability, as some might call as well. It does make you different. I mean, in PE class, I was always the last one to be picked. And you do feel that difference, even though people don't explicitly say it. So there is an implicit feeling that you are different to everybody, and that you might have to do more to just prove that you're the same as everybody else, almost like you're trying to prove to them that your disability won't hinder you. It is very implicit, but it is very present in the disability community. And I definitely felt that.
And with doing your swimming and martial arts, obviously, you're getting out there, you're trying these new experiences. Did that have an impact on your self-confidence or your belief in yourself?
Well, interestingly enough, swimming I stopped by the time I was 7 or 8. So, I love the sport. It just ended up being a fork in the road in terms of decisions that needed to be made. Martial arts was something I very much so fell in love with, but I also had very big issue of discrimination in the class, where I was being held back purposefully for about 5 years until one of the senior coaches found out and sort of called it out. And I wasn't really aware. I knew I was being treated unfairly, and definitely knew about, at the age of 13, 14, the word discrimination is something an adult would use. And it's not really something I could name and identify, and therefore express for myself that there was a problem, even though it was clear cut that there was a major issue. So that actually probably made me more shy, because I was like, why am I not treated the same? Am I different? Am I less worthy? And it had an impact across the board in terms of my schooling and all the rest of it. I did have a couple of years where I was a little bit less steady on my feet in terms of my self-confidence levels. Interestingly enough, when karate sort of opened up again, in the sense that I could compete and I was allowed to advance at the rate that I was meant to, in the sense that I deserved to, because I'd been putting all the hard work in, all of a sudden my confidence level shot up, because, I was just being treated fairly and given the same opportunity as everybody else to prove my worth. So yeah, confidence, I think, it's not come naturally to me. It's something external. A lot of external people have had to help me with. Even my coaches today will still need to sort of buck me up and tell me I can do things, even though I believe I can't.
When did you get diagnosed with cancer? So
it was a bit of a funny story. We accidentally found a tumor. Not going to go into that, but it was an accident. And we waited 6 months, because at the age that I was, so I think I was 22, 23 at the time, and the way the tumor was showing up, it looked really benign. So we were like, well, there's no point touching it, because there's no point putting me through surgery. I just had back surgery the year before, again, due to the sort of dislocating joints issue, which hadn't been diagnosed, but I was starting to suffer from quite a few of the symptoms. And then sort of 6 months later, the tumor had grown immensely. 3 times the size. So it was getting to the point where it had to come out. And so that was when I had the surgery when I was 23, but the results came out after my birthday. So I never know how old I was when I got diagnosed, because actually, technically, I was both 23 and 24, depending on which side of the line you like to look at it.
Being diagnosed at that young an age, somebody who is physical, you're going out there, you're doing your karate, you're keeping fit, you're being active. How did that impact on you? So the thing is, I'd actually stopped karate at 17 due to injuries from dislocating joints. So
And because of my joints and because of we didn't realize that the consequent lack of activity was going to make my joints get much worse. So actually what happened was from about the age of 18, I entered a surgical cycle where basically every 2 years, I had a joint that wasn't coming back into place naturally and needed to be repaired surgically. And with that, by the time I got to 2010, my physical fitness had dropped. I was struggling to walk, I was really struggling to do a 5K of any sort, walking, not running, right? Walking. By the time I got to 2010 with my back issues, I was struggling to do 10 minutes. And I was putting on weight and all the rest of it. And then when cancer hit, I was living in a cycle of fear, because I didn't know what next. I mean, I was afraid of what was next going to happen, because between my joints not settling down and cancer hitting, I was just like, how much worse can it get? One. And two, every time I tried to get better, something worse was happening. Did I even want to try anymore?
I mean, it just sounds almost emotionally just exhausting. I mean, you talk about this cycle of fear, which I want to come back to, but how did you keep going throughout this time period? I mean, were you continuing to be positive?
Well, it's really interesting because when I got the cancer diagnosis, I was actually in the middle of giving my first year exams for my master's, and it was sort of like I was just focused on that. I was doing reasonably well in my course, looking forward to the next year where I was going to have my first placement with the Luxembourgish Parliament. So I was very much so although I was still in a cycle of medical fear and sort of anxiety about what the future would bring, I'd started focusing on this thing, which could, was giving me quite a lot of positive energy. And when cancer hit, then all of a sudden I was starting to find out the implications of what type of treatment I was going to get, how long it was going to last, how fatigued I was going to get from it, things like that. I was like, well, bugger, there goes my master's course. Of all the things, I finally settled down in the sense that I finally got something to look forward to and stuff like that. And that's going too. So it was pretty awful actually. And what I decided to do was first of all, for anybody who enters the cancer world, you go from seeing the cancer world as an observer, or you might know somebody who's had cancer or things like that. But there is a line you cross when you become a cancer patient, and you suddenly become very familiar with the medical terms and the things that might be happening to you and all the secondary effects you need to watch out for and God knows what else. You don't have the mental space or the headspace to think about anything other than just getting yourself through your treatment. I remember one of the hospitals gave me this file, and it was incredibly useful because they'd actually put in separations for every single thing I needed to do. And all I needed to do is week by week was go through the file, and they would file it for me at every appointment I had, and they would do everything because they know cancer patients don't have the headspace to do anything more than just get through their treatment. And that was godsend, that file was. But with that, what I did was I promised myself I wouldn't lose my master's. That was the one thing I promised myself. I said cancer was going to take away a hell of a lot of my year. It was going to make me feel awful. It was an attack on my own person. My body had obviously rebelled against me. And obviously there was something crucially wrong because we had no factors behind this cancer. So there was obviously something crucially wrong going on in my system, which I needed to address. But I said to myself, I will deal with all of that in time. Right now, I don't want to lose my master's. And that's what kept me going.
I mean, when you talk about the cycle of fear, do you remember a point when you did break out of this cycle?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think. It definitely wasn't during treatment. It definitely wasn't for the year after treatment, because this anxiety. So there's a word in the cancer community called scanxiety. It's basically the anxiety around scans and appointments in hospitals once you finish treatment. Is so huge then that it's awful. Everything you might feel that might be a normal niggle gets checked. It takes a while to get over it. You never get over it, but it takes a while to ease that off. I think it was when I finally made the move to London and I actually realized how impacted I was. So I moved to London about 3 years after treatment, and when I finally, and because I was sort of living on my own or living with family, but essentially flying solo, essentially, rather than living with my parents, I sort of realized just how impacted I was, and how Luxembourg had become the place where I'd had cancer. And because I was no longer in that place or in that space or with those doctors or with the people I knew anymore, I sort of realized how much that had impacted me, and how much I needed to take care of me. And I started therapy, and it was probably within the first 6 months of that. So probably sort of early 2014, summer 2014 is probably when that cycle started changing.
I mean, even just hearing you talk about this, you know, the anxiety, what you've been through, what you've been dealing with, and, you know, both mentally and physically. I mean, the thing that I think about is just your resilience and your determination. You know, you were going to continue on doing your masters because that is something that you needed to focus on to get through. Where do you think this resilience came from?
I'd say a lot of it's down to my parents. They really taught me that if you fall, you get back up. So a lot of it was just watching them or watching people around me. And another part of it is simply down to me when I'm in a crisis, and I've been through God knows how many in my life now, that I tend to get very focused on something. And it was an instinctive thing I used to do previously. Whereas now I've actually consciously and mindfully do this, is I focus on something I can change within a set of circumstances which are out of my control. And that gives me the feeling of having, one, control, and two, feeling very empowered, that at least within my own sphere of influence, I can make a change. And if I can do that, then I can look at what's going to happen next. And that gives me the hope to then stay resilient. If you see what I mean, it's a very internal process. Which I now talk about because I hope to help others with it. But I guess it's instinctive, but now a learned behavior.
Yeah, no, absolutely, incredibly powerful as well. You know, what can you control in your own sphere, basically. So when did climbing come into it? When did you start climbing?
So it was really weird. I actually had my first climbing experience when we were on a school trip when I was like 8. We'd gone to France for a couple of days, and we had like a little trial session on a wall, and I was a bit confused about how to do it, because obviously, you know, 1.5 hands, and all my classmates are, you know, they're all normally abled children. And I went up, and I was a scrawny kid back then as well. I got up half a wall. When I got down, my school teacher was crying, because I don't think I was expecting that, and anybody else was expecting me to get that far. And that was it. I mean, it didn't faze me in the sense that, I remember my teacher's reaction, and that certainly moved me, and it still moves me today, 25 years later, or 22 years later, whatever. But climbing itself hadn't marked me as such. But then I heard that we were going to go back to the same place the year later. So I promised myself I wanted to get to the top, just like all my classmates had, because I missed the fact that I hadn't managed to top the route. And, I knew I couldn't in that first experience because I frankly tired out. But I was like, well, there's nothing stopping me from, I wasn't stronger the year later, I don't think, but there's nothing stopping me from mentally saying, push through. And I topped the route, and I was really, really proud of myself. And I realized I really liked that feeling of topping routes. So I asked my parents if I could go and start climbing in Luxembourg, and climbing can be a dangerous sport and can be seen to be a very dangerous sport. So my parents were like, categorically no. Also, by then I was in martial arts, or I was competing in swimming, one of the two. And so it didn't really matter that I wasn't climbing. I tried it again as a 13-year-old on a little family trip my parents had taken me on, and really enjoyed it then. Really realized that this was something, if not now, was going to become part of my life. And then I didn't do anything until after cancer treatment, where my left arm had been impacted through the cancer treatment. So, and my left arm is my only good arm, let's just call it. I have my little arm, which is great, but it can't do a lot of the sort of, things like, showering and getting changed and things like that are a bit difficult with just my little arm. So, my normal arm has to do most of those tasks. And I was struggling with the basic tasks. I mean, I could do them, but, I was getting fatigued really, really easily. And there were some major worries around my future dependence or independence. And one of my really good friends who I've known since we were 5 because we started school together, and who is a climber and who'd seen me through treatment, said this, she said, you need to find a way to get your arm better. And I'd been going to the gym already after, the hospital recommended me getting my fitness levels up and things like that. So I'd been going to the gym diligently, but my arm wasn't really matching the pace the rest of my body was in terms of getting stronger. If anything, it was struggling even more. And so my friend went, why don't you try climbing? And I just went, well, you're insane. I mean, as a 13 or an 8-year-old, I went and I had a good time, but that was when I was at least reasonably healthy and certainly didn't have issues raising my left arm over my head. And she was like, well, if anything, it's going to force that to happen. Let's go try. If worst case, you hate it and you don't do it again. Best case, you found something that works for you. And I tried, and it was a god awful session. It was painful. It was, I was done within 3 attempts at climbing. I didn't top anything, but the next day I was in so much pain all round my body that I could tell this was a sport that was going to do me good, because it was a holistic sport that could possibly equally train all my muscles and therefore keep my joints stable. And I was just like, wait a minute, this is something worth trying. And that was it. So I kept climbing maybe once every 2-3 months as a sort of yardstick to see how fit I was getting following all my gym sessions. But again, nothing serious. It was just, I was doing grade 4 climbs. If that, I was struggling up those still by the time I got to London. Then took a 1.5 years out of climbing because I didn't have a partner. I didn't even know how to do my knots. There was no point really climbing. I moved into this flat here 2 years ago, and my flatmate and I both wanted to climb. So we decided to make it our social outing. And so we started by about last year, Jan, we were going about once a week. And I would be dead after 4 or 5 climbs on a slab. I was really not fit because I'd lost all that. I wasn't going to the gym regularly anymore and things like that. So I'd lost all of those gains. And then I'd heard about the British Mountaineering Council's paraclimbing series, which is basically a competition series, open competitions at all levels, including completely new climbers are allowed. I'd been told about them because people had heard I'd been climbing a little bit. And people said, well, if you're good enough in the series, you get on Team GB. And I just went, it's great that there's a sport that's actually in the para category, which means it's something potentially I would be interested in competing in. But, I'm in no state now to try and compete. I mean, I know myself. I've competed in swimming and martial arts. I know how competitive I get with myself. I know how much I want of myself. And I know I wouldn't want to do this without trying some training and seeing whether my body can even handle training again. And so I got my climbing coach in Feb last year, and we went into the series having never met another para climber, having never seen the standard they climb at. And I came out at the end of the series physically absolutely broken because I'd had some post-cancer issues and sort of flares of all sorts happening through the year. And remember, I work full time as well. So I was sort of balancing. It was a very delicate balancing act. But I came out ranked second in my disability category, which was hugely unexpected.
That's amazing. That is absolutely incredible.
I mean, I don't really know how it went from literally, I'm not kidding you. I did not know how to do my knots very well at the beginning of last year. That's how unfamiliar. I didn't have my own harness. I didn't even have my own shoes. I mean, it was just nuts. And then I came out, there was a point in the competitions where the health issues had gotten so bad that, I should have, honestly, the rational part of me should have told the rest of me to quit. And I seriously was considering it. But because my coach hadn't given an inkling that I needed to stop, I went through it. Like I literally just hauled myself through those comps. And each time knowing I was doing worse and worse and worse because I was getting the health issues weren't resolving themselves. And I was just getting more and more tired. And my confidence levels had completely dropped. But it was worth it. It was worth it to come out with the ranking and to come out going, I know what I can do at the worst of health times. What can I do when my health is better? What can I do if I actually take training seriously? Because last year was a fluke. I mean, what I mean to say is I only was doing a session every 2 to 3 weeks with my coach. I didn't have endurance. I weighed a lot more. I wasn't doing anything off the wall, really. I hadn't taken into account anything like nutrition or sleep, or that. None of that had been dealt with. And I was still, my joints were very much so on an uncontrolled set of flares, because I hadn't really learned about the condition yet.
I mean, I always just want to go back to that first session, because there's two things that you said. And the first was, I tried. And that's sometimes, I think, with so many women, they almost don't want to try new things because you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're doing something that's scary. And then you followed up with, and it was awful. You're in pain. You did like 3 attempts. You didn't top on anything. The following day, the next day, you were in a lot of pain. Unfortunately, like most people will have that session, will think about the pain they're in and feeling, well, I didn't achieve anything. I didn't get to the top. I'm in pain. It was awful. I'm not going to do it again. Why did you decide to continue?
I believe just a tiny part of me is a masochist. So there is a part of me that says, when there is pain, there must be something to learn from it. So let's just put that part of me aside. So let's talk to normal women now. Why did I carry on? I didn't top the routes, but I did get damn well further than I thought I was going to get. My expectations was to not even get off the ground. Yes, of course, it would have been fabulous to top it, but I was being extremely realistic in my expectations that day. And for me, even managing to do what I did was an achievement. And it was also like, wait a minute, if this is what I'm like now, in my current health situation, in my current lack of fitness, with my left arm the way it is, what happens if I actually get fitter? So that was driving me on more than anything else. I could see potential in this sport. And also the fact of the matter is I didn't top it, I didn't even get halfway, I think. But the concentration needed for myself to sort of push through the pain, but also to stay focused on the wall and to understand how to hold the holds and to work out how to get around the fact that I don't climb the same way as everybody else, really working out my own way of climbing. I was so absorbed on the wall, even those precious few minutes, that actually I forgot my health situation and what I was worried about and the stresses of life and the fact that I was still in the middle of my master's, and I forgot all of that. I got to forget the world for a little bit. And that for me was ever so precious. That I think is probably more than anything else was what kept me going at that time. And the fact that I knew there was more to come if I kept trying. Failure for me was never, or falling or failing or not managing I never saw it as failure. I saw it as an opportunity. And that's something I think a lot of women can learn, that if you don't manage your first time round, that doesn't mean you won't ever manage. It just means that you need to either try again or try it a different way. And don't see it as something that's stopping you. Don't see it as something that's failing you or that you are a failure. Very rarely do people get things right on their first attempt, especially when they're new at something. And very rarely are people good at something when they're new. I mean, inherently, if you're new, you're not going to be good at it. So expect to not be good, but expect to get better if you like it and you want to carry on. I think that's the thing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I heard you talk at the Women Adventure Expo in October, you were talking about getting over self-limiting beliefs. What advice have you got for women and men about getting over those self-limiting beliefs?
I mean, the first one is to be really aware of them. Actually become aware of them, because the thing is, when you name it, when we can name something that we're scared of or that we find that limits us, by putting a name on it, you're making it less scary. You're giving it limitations. You're giving it boundaries. You have told that thing what it is, and therefore you can then start addressing it. So that's the first thing I would say is, one, become aware of it, and two, actually name the thing. Name what's scaring you. After that, as actually sit down and take a piece of paper, and I love working with colored markers, and work out what it is you can do within your own sphere of influence or your own sphere of control that can make you less scared of this thing. It's interesting because I did this for myself on Thursday. So I ended up hurting myself on the wall on Tuesday. It was a really spontaneous, slightly freak bump into the wall, and I knocked my elbow quite badly. And frankly, I was slightly in doubt for competing this coming week. And I knew I had to rest. The concept of rest scares me a lot. It's something I don't do willingly because I'm actually scared of it. So for me to rest, it's going very much out of my comfort zone. And it very much so part of me is going, I can't rest. I won't rest. I don't rest. I don't want to rest. Not because I shouldn't rest, but because I'm scared of it. And so I sat down with this blank sheet of paper and these colored markers and started drawing out and just drawing out and writing out what the problem was. I literally said, why am I scared of this? What is stopping me from resting? Why am I stopping myself from doing this? For me, it ended up being, well, for me, rest represented a time when I was doing chemo, when I had no choice but to rest because I was physically incapable of doing anything else. And I rested so much that I became restless. And it was a time of extreme vulnerability for me. And so for me today, rest still reminds me of that. So there's this innate instinctive fear that's in my body that rest actually means that I'm going to be going through a really bad patch in my life. And once I realized that, I was like, well, yeah, but that was back then. That's not now. I'm not going through chemo now. And suddenly I had these tools because I'd named the thing. I'd worked out on a piece of paper why it was scary for me. And then within my own sphere of control, I could already tell myself, well, actually, this isn't now. I'm not going through chemo right now. Rest will give me A, B, C, D, in my case, potentially getting back onto the competition track because I was in serious doubt until yesterday. And I haven't actually been back on the wall since Tuesday to see whether my elbow would hold. So it's still a question slightly. Rest will let me potentially get back onto the competition track, potentially in full fitness. Rest will let me take some downtime to settle my other joints down. Rest will let me feel less fatigued. Rest will let me focus on my mental game, on visualization. And suddenly I tried to find all these positives that rest could do to outweigh the fear that was still there for me not wanting to do it. And that's what I would say with anybody with a self-limiting belief is to do that. Find what's scaring you, name it, work out what you can do to get over it, and take the smallest of steps if you must. That's not a problem. Even just talking about it or writing it down is a step towards defeating it.
Absolutely, 100%. And what's next for you in terms of climbing?
So it's really interesting. So I got out of the climbing last year, and as I said, climbing had become a job. It stopped being a passion. It stopped being something I enjoyed. Because I slogged through that season last year. I was mentally fatigued. I didn't want to see the wall anymore, and I didn't love my coach to bits, but I didn't even want to see him anymore. And so I sort of said, look, I'm taking 5 weeks off from climbing. And I'm going to seriously think about what I want to do next. Whether I want to come back into the season at all, having seen how drained I was. And if I do, how is that going to look like? And in January, I sat down with a lot of pieces of paper and drew out what I wanted my year to look like. And I'd set out some climbing milestones, I'd set out some strength milestones, and I'd set out some physical milestones. And thankfully, I had to actually readjust all my milestones back in March already. I was obviously not realistic in terms of what I could do if I actually set my mind to it, which was quite nice to see. But right now, I'm actually back in GB trials. So the first round was a month ago. The second round is this Tuesday in London. And then there's 2 more competitions over the next, one more in Manchester and then one more in Newcastle. And we'll see what happens. Depending on my performance, there's potentially a spot with the development squad or on the team itself. If not, I'll reassess back in January and decide whether I want to go for it again. That's really what it is.
So you're also involved in the Women's Climbing Symposium as well. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So that was just, you know what, it's one of these things. Last year, I started off with a small blog with the This Girl Can campaign, talking about being new to climbing and what that was like for me. And I started all this blog with the intention in mind in about 2, 3, 4 years time, when I'm a little more established in my own career, to sort of become a public figure in the sense of voicing what it's like to live with visible and invisible disabilities, to, you know, be a Muslim, be somebody from an ethnic minority, be a woman, and sort of, you know, how I'm doing getting around these perceived barriers, let's say. And I didn't expect by writing that one blog that people would read it and listen, but they did, and all of a sudden I'm now a public figure. I mean, it's been a phenomenal year since that, because it was about this time a year ago when the This Girl Can blog got launched, and then, you know, winning the Asian Women of Achievement Award earlier this year, and God knows how many other very, very humbling opportunities have come across, including speaking at the Women's Expo last week. Women's Climbing Symposium got in touch and asked if I'd like to be a speaker for them. I said, you know, this is the Women's Climbing Symposium. Of course, yes. I'm not going to say no to an opportunity like that. I mean, wow. And then, you know, details got a little more hashed out and all. And then I'd originally understood last week that I was going to be closing keynote, and as of yesterday, I'm now opening keynote. And I'm just like, wow. You know, I'm a little bit shell shocked, really. I can't wait to talk to I mean, the Women's Expo last week was incredible because I got to speak to women in, not necessarily in the climbing world, but in the adventure world. And it was a fascinating experience, and one that, you know, I've taken a lot away from and learned a lot about. But this women's climbing, it's climbers. So I'm going to be speaking to women who are really into climbing and know about climbing, and they're going to be looking to me to be their opening keynote and set the tone of the day, which is just incredible.
So well deserved as well. So absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. That part of me still doesn't believe that, and I'm quite happy with the fact that part of me still doesn't believe it's deserved, just because it just means that the whole experience will remain so novel and special as a consequence.
Absolutely. And I know that you'll enjoy it and inspire so many people by being able to share your story. So you do have a website. Where is the best place for people to find out more information about you?
So I'm actually out across multiple social media channels now. So I've got my website, which is www.anoushéhusain.com. Otherwise, there is Instagram. So you just find me at Anoushé Husain, and I post there quite frequently. So you get to see the ins and outs of my day to day. Quite a lot on that. There's also Facebook, so just find me Anoushé Husain 1 on Facebook, and that is really, I mean, it mirrors the website a lot in terms of what content that's going on there. And then you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. And are you still working with This Girl Can?
So I'm actually one of the front faces for the This Girl Can Climb campaign this year. So if you look at the British Mountaineering Council's website, or you'll actually see my lovely mug on a few of the pictures there. So yeah, am I still working with This Girl Can? Yes, indirectly, not as directly as I was last year, but yes, I do work with them indirectly.
Oh, fantastic. And Anoushé, what are your final words of advice for women out there who may be struggling with belief in themselves, or, you know, or maybe scared to try something new, or they're recovering from injury or illness? You know, what advice would you have? Final words of wisdom.
What's the worst that could happen? That would be it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've ended up asking myself. What's the worst that could happen? And if the worst is something you can tolerate, go for it.
It's well worth it. You know, what is the worst that can happen? Sit down, go through it all, think about it logically, and then just go, try it. And you never know what's going to happen. Anoushé, thank you so much for coming on Tough Girl Podcast to share your story. You are an absolute inspiration, and I know that you're going to encourage more women to get out there and get climbing.
Thank you.
Hey tribe, how you doing? I hope you are all well. I always sometimes just think it must be so random if you really don't know anything about me to hear me just like chatting at the end. So if you're thinking, who is Sarah? What does she do? Then please do go check out toughgirlchallenges.com, and you can find a load of information about me and my different challenges, from running the Marathon des Sables and through hiking the Appalachian Trail in 100 days. Now, if you are also a listener and you listen every single week, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you do hit that subscribe subscribe button, like, comment, tell your friends about the Tough Girl podcast and help to spread the word. It really does encourage more women to get out there, to get fit and active, and it also increases the amount of female role models in the media, which is so important for our young girls and young boys growing up who need to see that women can get out there and do these incredible things. And talking of doing incredible things, let me just share a few little tidbits of what the tribe has been up to. So a massive well done for Claire Davis Kelly, who has completed in the Dublin Marathon. Massive well done. Charlotte Crawley, I know you've got the Queenstown Marathon coming up. Good luck with that. Really keeping my fingers crossed that you go sub 4 hours. That is an awesome challenge and an awesome goal to go for. And by the way, I do apologise if I say your names wrong. Just please do know that I really do try to get them right. So Jo Rickleby ran her 1,000th mile this year, which is truly epic. And I'm very excited, Jo, to see what you're going to be doing in 2018 in terms of your running goal. I know it's going to be absolutely epic. We've got MJ over in America who did her first trail race, and it was an ultra as well. Massive well done, absolutely fantastic. And then we've got some ladies going out there and getting qualifications, which I absolutely love. So massive congratulations to Emma Crampton, who qualified as a level 1 British triathlon coach. We need so many more women in these positions, being role models, showing other girls and women out there that you can do this. And it's going to encourage more women to get into the sport and try it. So massive well done, Emma. And also Esther Selhai, I hope that's right, Selhi, Selhai. Esther got her level 1 as a paddle sport coach and also her 3-star kayak touring qualification. Again, absolutely fantastic. It's so inspiring to hear about what you are all up to, what you're doing, getting these qualifications, getting out there, going walking, going running, going cycling, doing what you enjoy and following your passions. It honestly does create this massive ripple effect, which is so important because your friends and your family will see you doing these challenges and they'll start to think, well, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. So thank you so much for all of your support. And talking of support, I do want to thank all of my patrons who help me every single month by being a regular financial sponsor of the Tough Girl podcast and Tough Girl challenges. And me, it is amazing what your financial support does, whether that's $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. It makes such a huge difference for me to have a regular income coming in every month and for me to be able to fund the running costs of the podcast, of the blog and the website, because like anything, nothing is for free. If you want to learn more about becoming a patron, then please do go check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. As always, all the links can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for all your support. Have an amazing day. Whatever it is that you are wanting to do, get after it. Just take that first step, break it down into smaller chunks and just give it your all. As always, I'll be back with you next Tuesday for another episode of the Tough Girl podcast. They come out in the UK at 7 a.m. in the morning, and whatever time zone you are in, we are now listened to in 172 countries around the world, I believe. So I hope you've got the time marked down in your diary to listen to a new episode of the Tough Girl podcast. We've got some phenomenal guests coming up in the following few weeks. The reason I'm not sharing who the guests are is basically because I don't know what order to put them in. They're all amazing though, so I think you're going to absolutely love them. All right, take care and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.